If you're looking to start a smartphone vlog, all you really need is a smartphone and few extras. In this article, I'm going to guide you through some basic steps that will enable you to create engaging content for your vlog, using a gimbal and a microphone. I'll be using the DJI OM4, but it doesn't matter if you have a different gimbal, they all work roughly the same. The Osmo Mobile 3 is almost identical to the OM4. They both use the Mimo app, which works the same for both gimbals. Smartphone vlog, how to choose a niche. If you're doing this to grow your following, then you will need to choose a niche, or niche, as some people pronounce it. The days of people videoing nothing but the mundane events of their daily lives and becoming successful are mostly behind us. If you're already a celebrity, then it might work. But for most of us, we probably need a niche. A niche is a subject for your vlog. Some examples are beauty, fitness, tech, movie reviews, politics, travel, economics, history, and so on. There are thousands of possible subjects for you to choose from. One major tip is to stay focused on that subject. The people who follow you probably do so because you have some knowledge they want to know more about. This also makes a big difference to how effective a platform's algorithms are at bringing you new viewers. For example, if you publish a video on beauty, the algorithm registers your channel as being about beauty and will show people looking for beauty tips in your direction. If you then make another video about gardening tips, the algorithm gets confused and your channel won't grow as quickly. As well, all the people who followed you for beauty tips are much less likely to watch your video about gardening. So the algorithm sees that not many of your subscribers are watching that video and comes to the conclusion it's not worth showing to anyone else. For this reason, when you choose your niche, make sure it's something you love talking about. Make sure this is something you want to make content about in the long term. And the more obsessed you are with your subject, the better, because your infectious energy will come across to your audience and keep them coming back for more videos. Smartphone vlog equipment. To create a smartphone vlog, all you need is 3 things. I mean, sure, you could just use your phone, hold it in your hand and use the inbuilt mic. But you will do better with some kind of stabilization, like a tripod. In this case, I'm using a DJI OM4, because not only is it a gimbal, it also has a tripod, and the Mimo app comes with a ton of useful vlogging features. The only other thing that's important is a microphone. A $10 or $20 clip-on mic can make all the difference. There's shotgun microphone options too. Video capture. So, there's 2 basic types of footage you need to shoot for your smartphone vlog: talking to camera footage and B-roll footage. Talking to camera footage can be shot walking around outside, or sitting or standing somewhere. This will depend on the type of vlog you're making. Travel vlogs obviously lend themselves to walking and talking. Tech reviews are more likely to be studio-based, sitting down. Personally, I tend to record talking to camera footage at 1080p, known as FHD, and at 24 fps. But when I shoot B-roll, I either shoot 1080p 24 fps or 4K and 60 fps. So why do I choose those settings? Well, talking clips tend to be much longer, so shooting at 4K would use up much more memory on my phone. Plus, people are just watching you talk, so do they really need incredible quality? I pretty much always master my videos at 1080p, anyway. B-roll, cinematic and regular. There's really 2 categories of B-roll, one is showing how to do something and the other is cinematic, high-quality visuals. If I'm showing how to use a piece of kit, I don't usually need 4K footage. Again, I just shoot at 1080p. For the more cinematic B-roll, I shoot 4K and usually at 60 fps. A high frame rate allows me to slow shots down when I edit to create slow motion. 4K means I can reframe the shot if I need to. Plus, if the shot isn't 100% smooth, stabilizing software generally works better with 4K footage. But if you find shooting 4K takes up too much memory and processing power, just shoot 1080p. The DJI OM4, and the OM3 or even the Osmo Pocket, is packed with features to use for your smartphone vlog. There's story mode, gesture control, active tracking, AI editing, time-lapse, hyperlapse and more. I'm not saying you should use them all for every video, but these features can help you keep your vlogs engaging. The advantage of story mode is speed. On the downside, the resolution you can output is limited to 1080 FHD. iPhone vs Samsung. I have both iPhone 12 Pro Max and Samsung Note 20 Ultra. They work a bit differently with the Mimo app, which has slightly more features on iOS than Android. Using my iPhone there's no manual mode, so I can't set shutter speed and ISO and that kind of thing. Personally, I rarely use the manual controls when shooting this kind of stuff anyway. Smartphones have all kinds of software working to create the best looking images, and when you use manual control, this can actually negate them. I know a lot of advice is to lock exposure, but personally I don't always do that. If a shot is going from dark to light and looks horrible, then I will lock it. I'm only talking about a smartphone vlog, now. If I was making a short film, I would use manual controls. That said, as dynamic tone mapping is becoming more of a dominant feature in smartphones, especially iPhones, I've been developing ways to work with this feature rather than to fight it. Dynamic tone mapping. In recent years, dynamic tone mapping, or remapping, has become more important to the look of smartphone shot video. Especially if you have a recent iPhone, I'd say from iPhone 7 or 8 onwards. I think it's important to understand how it works if you want to get the best video out of your smartphone. Android devices also use this, but it's not as aggressive. What it does is try to even out the exposure in different parts of the frame. In a normal camera, exposure is even across the frame. But with dynamic tone remapping, the software picks out an area, say an overexposed area, and adjusts the ISO just for that area of the image. I'll show you what I mean on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. The software adjusts this blown out part of the image. It's like magic, really, the way it does this. If the exposure level was even across the frame, that area would remain blown out. With tone mapping, it adjusts just that area of the frame. It draws a mask around the overblown part and pulls down the ISO just for that part. This is how smartphones achieve a better dynamic range than would be possible with such small sensors. You can go out and shoot video for your vlogs without worrying about exposure settings as much as if you had a regular camera. The sky will be less likely to be blown out, for example. The reason Apple and other companies are putting this software into our smartphones is so we can shoot better video quicker. The software is doing the work for us. This is why many people who like using manual controls have a problem with iPhone now. With my Samsung, the device lets you disable it when you lock exposure. But iPhones don't, they force you to use tone mapping. Now, there are times when this mapping really fails. Like flickering skies. But we have to accept that, and in return we get to shoot great video faster. However, I do hope they're working on fixing that issue. DJI OM modes. The DJI Mimo app has quite a few different modes, so which ones should we choose for a smartphone vlog and why? For walking and talking shots, it's probably best to use tilt locked. You want the camera to stay pretty fixed while you are walking, you don't want it moving up and down on the tilt axis. For regular B-roll shots, you might want to use follow mode. Now the gimbal follows your movements. So if you want to tilt up to look at something you can. And the gimbal will keep the movement smooth. For more wild B-roll shots, you can explore the other modes. For example, the FPV, first-person view, mode allows you to fly your camera around like a fighter jet. This might suit some fast cuts with up-tempo music. Live focus. I personally don't use live focus, but it's an option if you want that bokeh-style blurry background. Especially if you're talking to camera or filming a human subject and the camera is pretty still. Once you or the camera are moving around, this live focus effect doesn't work as well. Talking to camera shots. When I film my talking to camera shots, I usually have the smartphone fixed on a tripod. But you could use your DJI gimbal with the mini tripod legs. If you want to move around while talking, then using the gimbal is a great option. Just set the object tracking running and it will follow you around. If you're filming alone, you can use the gesture control plus tracking and it will lock onto you and start recording. When I'm just standing still talking, I use a simple wired clip-on microphone. I also use my Samsung rather than my iPhone, as I prefer the look. I believe the Note 20 Ultra main camera gives a little bit more of a blurred background. Using the main camera means I can't see myself when I'm filming. Thing is, I prefer not to see myself anyway, as I find it distracting. This way I can just look directly at the camera and start talking. And that's another smartphone vlog tip: make sure you are looking at the camera when you talk. Imagine the camera is your friend and you are just chatting away. Make that personal connection with your viewers and they'll come back for more videos. So how do I do this if I can't see myself? I usually set the camera to 1080p, 24 fps. Get the angle about right. Often I switch to Samsung Pro video mode but leave the camera completely in auto. But I do have the option to fix exposure or focus if I need to. Now, I just start recording and then run around. The Samsung Note 20 Ultra has face detection autofocus, so it should automatically find my face and focus on me. However, if there are other faces in the background it might get confused. Another smartphone vlog tip: make sure to have an interesting background. Preferably, a background that is connected to your chosen subject. I mean, I'm using my parents' living room. But at least it's fairly interesting, even if it's not the perfect look for my smartphone filmmaking theme. So don't get hung up on having a studio space, if you don't have access to that. But do avoid standing in front of a blank wall. I would also say, don't have your background too close behind you as it doesn't look too good. Plus, some distance between you and your background will also help to make your background more blurry. Third tip: make sure to frame yourself well. Generally, this means putting yourself in the middle of the frame. Or use the rule of 3 RDS grid and place yourself on one of the vertical lines. Avoid framing yourself badly. It just downgrades the viewer experience a little and gives people a reason to click away from your video. After a first try, I watch what I've got and adjust the camera angle if I need to. Then I go again. Be natural. Someone once said a smartphone vlog is like the behind-the-scenes footage from a movie. I mean, you can make your smartphone vlog however you want. Certainly you should go with whatever works for you. That said, many vlogs have a diary-like element to them. Remember, the biggest key to success as a smartphone vlogger is engaging your audience. And people love to get a glimpse of who you are, including the ups and the downs. The things that go right, the things that go wrong, it's all part of the story. One mistake people make is to think they need to look 100% professional. In fact, that can sometimes be off-putting, if being professional means being a bit cold and unemotional. Honestly, your audience would rather see the real you, or as much as you're willing to show them. I know what some of you are thinking right now: it's easy to say be natural, but it's not so easy to do in practice. So here's some tips to help you be yourself in front of the camera. How to be natural. When I first started doing this, I was really uncomfortable recording myself. Firstly, I found I couldn't talk to camera without umming and erring and correcting myself, getting lost, forgetting what I was supposed to say and so on. I have nothing but admiration for people who seem to be able to talk so clearly without making too many mistakes. Of course, there are those who read from a pre-written script. So, if you struggle with this aspect like me, then you can think about setting up an autocue. The downside of using an autocue is that it can make you come across less natural, which disconnects you from your audience.